So I'm here today with Adrian from Robocash. Adrian, you're based out in California, are you?
That's right in Southern California, lovely Irvine.
And is the weather good there? Because it's 34 degrees in London today.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's usually a typical lovely 70 to 80 degrees here. It's lovely here, it really is. So good luck with that.
We have Celsius here, so it's about, it's a bit more than 34 Fahrenheit.
27, 28 degrees Celsius or so, kind of not too hot, not too cold.
Okay. Anyway, Adrian, tell us more about Robocash. Tell us more about how you set it up, where your background is with startups, how it all came together. Talk to us.
So my first experience in the startup world was as a young lad. I was 13 years old and I would join my mother to go to the grocery store, and I would run away from her to go to the Dollar Tree store and buy 100 packs of pixie sticks for $1. And I realized I could sell them 10 for $1 to my classmates in middle school. I made a 900% profit, and I did that for about 2 months until the principal got wind of it and shut my business down. So ever since that first taste of roaring success, I've wanted to pursue more and more things, and I've always looked to the niche world to sort of figure out what is out there that I can use and make better or deliver to people to, basically get me, in a position where I can help out more people. So for me, at the young age, helping people out was using my profits to buy myself a pizza at the end of the week. But as I've grown, my outlook has matured, and I really just want to help more people, as many people as possible. So I slowly got driven into solving some of the world's hardest problems, which is why I pursued engineering. I've just had a knack for that. I love the challenge. I love overcoming the challenge. So, I became an engineer, went to school at UC Merced, and I got another taste of starting up new things when I started up the first men's and women's cross country team. There was no sports at UC Merced, University of California, Merced, for those of you who don't know. Super new university right in my hometown. I was like, I got to go start that thing because I love running too. And I did. It took 3 years. My co-founder and I, eventually we got it going. And in the final year, senior year, we were officially the first official sports team at UC Merced, which was great. So then I went to the PhD and decided to solve some of the world's hardest problems in nano engineering. So I did a PhD in material sciences and engineering. And along the way, I played with a few other things. I did something called credit card manufacturer spending, which was pretty fun. I won't go into that too much unless you want to know more. And then I also did drop shipping, where I found this niche thing. I would get freezer listings from Sears.com, post them on eBay, and sell them for like $200-300 more than they were, and people would buy them. I sold $150,000 worth of products over 5 years, and I barely did an hour's worth of work per order. So and I played around with a few other things too, but none of them were too successful. So I've always been sort of trying new things, and that's sort of the story in a big giant nutshell.
Okay. That leads me on to my question about nano engineering and the things you're doing in nano at the moment, because obviously a lot of people know nanotechnology because of 7 and 9 from Star Trek and the Borg. But I understand that it's not quite the same nanotechnology that we're talking about here.
Well, it could be. But what I was doing was focusing more on the world's thinnest material and trying to grow it in 3-dimensional shape. So I eventually became an expert in how to do that particular thing. And there's many other applications that you can use this for, but I would just focus on how do we make the world's thinnest material in 3D porous shapes. And everyone always goes to, it'd be good for batteries. It'd be good for growing bone tissue and a whole bunch of other things. But I just wanted to say, can I grow this thin material in a 3D shape? And I spent my entire career doing that. And eventually it got to the point where I realized that I was just really curious in how the world around me works. And that's the reason I went into material sciences, because I wanted to learn what drives every little thing around us. That's what material sciences is, the material that was used to make this board, the chair I'm sitting on, all that. So eventually I realized at the end of the PhD that, that was hard. And it's easier to sell bits than it is to sell atoms. And so I realized what I really want to do is see how I can use the nano to influence the macro, or I like to say, use the micro to influence the macro. In material science, it's super easy, right? You move atoms around, you get a super cool new material, you put it on a rocket ship, and it goes off into space. Well, in the digital world, I eventually discovered the concept of nano-deposits and Robocash. And here we use microtransactions or nano-deposits to influence the macro, which is this $10 billion scam in the industry. I don't know if you want to go into that right now, or
yeah, please do, because I think a lot of people have heard about skimming of bank accounts, where you take off the last few decimal points and it all adds up. I understand that that's where the first light bulb came for you.
Yeah, actually. So, I mean, I was into, I really like your name, by the way, disruptive banking, banking disrupted. I think that's such a cool concept. So that's kind of what drew me to, I just like that a lot. That's cool. And so in speaking of, disrupting banking, part of that, you look toward new payment platforms, right? So then you eventually seep into the world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and all this. And it's really overtaken by a lot of people who have vested financial interest in their particular cryptocurrency. And really, if you take a step back and you just look at this as a piece of code, that does something really, really well, because that's ultimately what everything runs on: Zoom, the internet, pieces of code like Java is used to build Android applications. These pieces of code, they find something that they're really, really good at, and then they become the best in that thing. So initially I looked at Bitcoin as a transfer of value. And when thinking of the concept of spam calls, I get a lot of spam calls. I've been getting them since 2011. That's actually when I got my first spoof call, which is when someone called me as my friend, and I picked up and there was some hoarse voice on the line and I was scared. I called my friend, I hung up and I called my friend. I was like, hey, did you just call me? And he said, no. And then I realized, wow, you can spoof people's phone numbers. This is going to be a crazy social engineering technique. That was 10 years ago or so. I didn't have time to really think about the problem then, but after the PhD was done, I wanted to solve more problems, and I kept getting spam calls. So I looked into the industry. I realized that in the US, we lose $10 billion a year to fraud. So elderly victims, vulnerable people, they're defrauded of $10 billion every year. And that's just heartbreaking to me. It really is. And then I looked at, okay, well, what has been done to solve this? So you have laws like the TCPA, Teleconsumers Protection Act. You have the Do Not Call list. I think you in the UK have something similar. Okay, cool. But you probably noticed you still get spam calls, right? Because if you're the person who's calling you—
there are jurisdictions outside of the UK that can still call us, and that's probably what's happening. Yeah.
Jurisdictional challenges is the term that I like to use, because it sort of sums all that up. How are you going to penalize people if you can't even find them in the first place, right? So laws are nice, but they're not helping the problem. And it's been 20 years for us in the US, and nothing's changed. The spam volume has increased 50% year over year for the past 4 years. And then you have application. You got your robokillers, you've got your true callers, your Umail. That's my boss over there waving to me. He runs the incubator here, so lovely guy. These apps have been around almost just as long. So Truecaller and Umail started about 10 years ago as well, and the problem still hasn't been solved. So then I was thinking, well, what is it that we need to look at then? You take a first principles approach, which is sort of what I do, because I'm an engineer. That's how I start things off. Well, what is the root cause of this? And I realized that it's great that Truecaller and Robokiller and all those guys were out there. I love them for that, because they showed a lot of data of what doesn't work, and that's not their fault. We need a lot of people trying to solve this problem. But what they're doing is spam detection. They're using crowdsourced databases where you are on the application, you get a phone number you think is bad, and you mark it as spam, and they add that number to their database. And then when that number calls anyone else, they're marked as spam. So you got spam detection, you've got databases, and spam algorithm, seeing the patterns in which a phone call makes phone calls, and you call that a spammer and you warn people. But that hasn't stopped the problem. We're still getting spam calls. We're getting just as many as we've ever gotten. So then I took a step back and said, well, why are they calling us? Well, one, the rise in cheap technology is so easy to make these automated phone calls and just blast out phone numbers to anyone. And two, you can make a lot of money from it if you don't have the morals that of a decent person. You can steal a lot of money and never get caught. So it's ultimately economic incentive that drive the spam problem. So then I thought, well, we need to do a solution that is focused on the economic incentive. And so that's where the concept of nano-deposits came through, or a financial filter, which is basically just really simple. We implement that algorithm, a FinTech algorithm, in a mobile app. And you download that app, it lets through all of your contacts, it ignores anyone who's not on your contact list. So anyone who wants to call you still can, if they leave you a nano deposit. So if they leave you 5 cents, your phone will ring. And if your phone's ringing, you know that they left you 5 cents. So if you pick up that call and you talk for more than 25 seconds, we automatically refund that caller their entire 5 cents because they were a good caller. But if you pick up the phone and you hear that usual nonsense, you'll hang up right away. And you know what happens then? You collect 80% of that deposit and we collect 20%. The spammer loses everything. So we take a more black and white approach. It's not a run on smart contract or anything like that. If anything, this is a dumb contract. All we say is like, okay, he's left you a deposit. Okay, the call has lasted more than 25 seconds. Good caller. He's left you a deposit. The call is less than 25 seconds. Bad caller. Here's your money. So that's basically it. And it's the simplest thing that I could think of because I like simple things. I don't want to do hard about it.
I mean, here in the UK, we've had challenges around this. A few years ago, the older people in the UK had to get computers because they had to use internet banking, which they've had to do even more during COVID. And we have a lot of people from India calling the UK, offering Microsoft-related services. So calling up and saying, there's something wrong with your license. We need to have a look at your computer. By the way, it's $100. And a lot of people fall for it. And we've had a lot of scams like this. Now, I understand that with your call technology, these scammers would come into the phone of the individual, and that individual would already see that they're looking to pay. And if they're looking to pay, they probably don't want to help. They want to sell.
Or just reach out to you, from an entrepreneur trying to reach to a venture capitalist, and VCs getting their phones around quite a bit. You want to be able to call someone. So what is the value of talking to that person? What is that worth to you personally? And honestly, the Nano-deposits financial filter, that's just the first gateway, right? The second one is, okay, now that we're in communication, what is that time worth? And that's something that we ultimately leave up to you to decide. So soon we're going to have a feature where you can continue to pay people to stay on the phone. And actually, I've been testing this myself for the past couple of weeks, where we make outbound calls to people. We send them a text message beforehand saying, hey, you'll get paid if you pick up this phone call. And we're seeing a higher pickup rate with those people, and they're actually getting paid per second. So I developed this cool tool where we just count the number of seconds of a phone call, and after that call is done, we pay them whatever. So far we've been using 25 cents a minute, 50 cents a minute, and 75 cents a minute. And we're still going through tests right now with that. But you're entirely right. Someone might just be using this to sell to you, but the cool thing is that they might also be willing to pay you to listen to them too, because ultimately they're paying you for your time. And the more they can keep you on the line, the more likely you are to buy their products and services. So it's a win-win situation, really, the way that I look at it.
So the name Robocash is quite an interesting name. I mean, we've heard of names like Catfish, perhaps not quite the market that you're looking at here, but Robocash. Well, where did the name come from? How does the history of the name come? Well, you got a call center of robots there somewhere in the background, and people are thinking of your brand. They're thinking, oh my goodness, the robots are coming to deal with my cash.
I've had some people get concerned about the name, and to be honest, it was just the first thing that popped to mind because I was dealing ultimately in a solution based on economic incentive, and I wanted the simplest way to describe that to people. So cash is a term that everyone understands. It's just money, right? And robo, because we get robocalls. So I was like, oh, robocall, cash. Let's just splice the two together. It was pretty straightforward. But ultimately,
you took it a step further, didn't you? You came up with a new acronym, not FinTech, but FynCom, is it?
That's correct. So ultimately, Robocash is just one of the services that FynCom offers. And so after a while of dealing with the Robocash concept and the Nano-deposit concept, letting that all bake in my head and realizing we didn't build a spam blocker, we built a financial algorithm, a FinTech algorithm that can be deployed to help direct communication, to help increase the signal from the noise. And so we realized that what we're really doing is a financial communications problem. And so then we played with the name, and FinTech already exists. FynCom does, it kind of does, but it's not a widely used term yet. So FynComm. And then similarly from there, we were like, well, we want to be a startup that represents that. So we came up with the name FynComm, FynCom. So, we deal in financial communication, and we use our FinTech algorithm in different communication medium. The first of which is going to be Robocash. And I just sort of gave you a sneak peek of the B2B solution, which is, convince people to pick up the phone at a higher rate by paying them to do so. And that, we haven't really decided on a name for that yet. FinCash, FinCalls, we don't know. We're still playing around with this. This is pretty recent development, actually.
Okay, and when it comes to the market you work with, obviously you've suggested here that there's a community of people you'll be helping. There's a lot of people out there who will probably benefit from what you're doing as well. Can you explain to us a little bit about how you see the community around this product and how you're reaching out to them, how you're making your brand popular amongst them?
Yeah, so there's two sides to it. On the one side, we ultimately want to serve the end user. We want to serve you, the people, because that's how we were built, with the mindset to just help people. And so that's the most important side to us. And we need to achieve network effect in there in order to have any meaningful traction on the business side. So on the one hand, we have users. On the other hand, we have businesses, right? So users will use Robocash as a defensive use of our algorithm. They'll use it to stop incoming calls unless there's a nano deposit associated with it. And there, we debuted it within the Nano community. It's a cryptocurrency that's been around since 2015, and they've been, we use Nano within the Robocash platform because that is one of the cryptocurrencies that meet our criteria. So we didn't just pick a random cryptocurrency. I actually wanted to use Bitcoin in the first place. I was thinking in Satoshis, but when it comes down to it, there are 6 criteria that we needed. We needed it to be fee-free, to be real-time, scalable, no fees associated with opening a new wallet, and attempt to be decentralized, and also one more, but it must not have been that important. So, it's pretty hard to find fee-free, real-time, scalable cryptocurrencies that don't require you to put forth a deposit. You have like your XRPs and your Stellars, but you need a little bit of, it's like having a dollar in your checking account in order to keep it open. And I don't want anyone to have to pay into the system to have to benefit from the use of it. I want to give people an experience with cryptocurrency where they don't have to put any money for it. And that's kind of what we've done at Robocash. So I talk a lot within not a lot, but the Nano community within the Reddit subreddit has been super helpful at beta testing our application, helping us before we get ready for the market. Ultimately, what we need to do is convince people that if enough of us stop answering the unknown calls, unless there's a deposit associated with it, we're going to reduce the supply of phone numbers that answer unknown calls. And ultimately, that increases the demand to access those numbers. So when we get into the business side, there's a $200 billion call center market globally, and 19% of those focus on outbound calls. So the two industries that we've segmented are public opinion and marketing research, as well as direct sales and telemarketing. And then recently, we've looked at business owners who want to be able to talk to any users that have churned within their system and sort of get quality feedback. Why did you leave the system? What could I have done to make this better? And ultimately, it'll help businesses find their own product market fit by convincing people to give them quality feedback, which they can use to improve their services. So the business side, you think, who on earth would buy into a system where I have to pay now to make phone calls, right? And that's a tough sell, but it's easier if there's no one that picks up your phone call in the first place. So that's sort of the chicken and egg problem that we have, that we're, trying to work with both at the same time. I hope that was not that convoluted.
Of course, it raises the question that so many banks and institutions are focusing on people's digital identity, whereas your product seems to still be dealing with people's real identity, as in phone numbers, calling, personal touch. Why did you not go into the digital identity like nearly every startup does?
We thought that there were a lot more gatekeepers and competition in the industry. When we came up with the nano-deposit concept, I looked into patenting it. And strangely enough, there was no sort of IP based on the concept of time-based refundable microtransaction as a spam prevention mechanism. And so we ended up pushing out a patent on that, early last year. And surprisingly, we're currently in talks with the USPTO about that. They got back to us so quickly on that. So from what they showed us, there's not that much competition in this space. There's some people who have thought of this similarly. You pay to get through to someone, and that's like an intent to charge. It's like the same old retail mindset. I'm paying you for your time. I'm paying you for goods and services. What we wanted to do is do the opposite of a payment. I'm leaving you a deposit, and if it's a good call, I'm going to get that back. There's no financial transaction gone either way. And so we were able to, put out a stake for IP in the phone call industry, and that's our moat that we can use in phone calls. So that's why we pursued that option ultimately. But we do plan to make slow, subtle moves into the more generalized digital identity space.
Okay, but digital identity is dominated by blockchain, as we've been, hearing and watching in the press and what have you. What's the IT side, and who are the tech people in Robocash? Tell us more about the tech team there.
Well, we had a great developer from one of the big four tech companies that helped us build our backend and sort of guided this whole thing. And he had to focus on his career. He's still working with us as an advisor, but ultimately what he gave us was a giant treasure chest that I could use to learn and build more on top of. So I've been taking over the development range myself. I have 3 years of computer science. I did a good amount in my PhD, so it's not that difficult for me to pick it up. So I've been sort of building off of the foundation that he left us. And sometimes my co-founder, Ryan, I'll grab him, sit him down and make him code up some layouts in Android for me so that, I can just work on the back end stuff. So back and front end, I've been doing all of the work over the past 3 months with some help from Ryan and some advisory assistance from, an experienced developer. And that's about it. Currently we're sort of digging around to see if there's any interested folks to come in and help us, but we really haven't been making much noise publicly. We're trying to keep things low key and work on getting customers and, have them using our product for product market fit first before we start telling the world more about this.
Okay, but you're not PHP based, surely?
No. So the backend is Java based. We use.
Can we ask which version of Java? Because that's been quite a big point in Europe these days.
Oh, really? We're using 1.8 right now. Well,
we've been talking about Java 12 here even.
Oh yeah. It's up to 14 now, I believe. But
yeah,
we don't. Java 1.8 has all of the resources that we need right now. So that's what we're sticking with for now.
Good. Sounds like a robust system in that case.
I know that.
Tell us a little bit about the data then, because obviously here in the UK and across Europe, we've got this general data protection rights that people have been given recently. This has a huge effect as well, because you have to consent to give people your data. They have to have a data protection officer. How do you manage all of that?
Well, right now we don't have that much people on board, so there's not much to manage. But, we have the foundation for that, which is in our privacy policy. Ultimately, in California, we have something that's similar to the GDPR. So in the United States, we abide by those rules for California. And in the United States, it's a little bit less lax. The rest of the United States hasn't really caught up to Europe and the UK. So, we follow GDPR-like data standards for California and the United States. They can request to sort of have that same capability, be able to delete all my data, be able to retrieve all my data, and, the right to be forgotten, that sort of thing. And anyone from the UK, which right now Robocash, the app is on the Google Play Store, open to the UK, Philippines, United States, Canada, and Brazil. And so if you're from the UK and you feel like, hey, you guys are violating my privacy rights, you need to just let us know that, and, we'll follow the standards there. But as far as what we're ultimately trying to do in sort of a bigger picture sense is the data economy right now is completely broken. There's this huge wealth gap between companies, people who are able to create tech companies and use software to suck up data, with social media, having you join it, having you sort of interact with it, you start putting your data into this thing and that becomes valuable, and tech companies can turn around and sell that to advertisers, right? So there's this huge mismatch between people who know how to create tech and people who don't, there's a small percentage of people who know how to create this kind of tech. And ultimately what we're trying to do at FynCom and with Robocash is to teach people that you should be getting paid for your data. That should be a normal thing. It never should have been mismatched like it was in the beginning, where you use a free application and you unwillingly give up your data, and people profit off of that. It was sort of a Pandora's box, really. We didn't know it was going to be like that.
So just for an example, TikTok, is probably a big topic for you guys in America. Yeah, and of course, everyone who's using TikTok is giving their data to China. Perhaps they know about it, perhaps they don't know about it. But what would you say to people like that?
Nothing. I wouldn't say anything. You know, if you really like TikTok, you keep on using it. What the challenge is not with the people. You know, the people are going to do what they do, and you can't help that. The challenge is going to be with entrepreneurs and companies who are building product. What you need to do is become attractive enough that people just want to use your product, and you have to give them something that makes them want to use that. So if you can't compete with TikTok and the algorithms that they have to make cool little video, you know, AR type of stuff, you need to do something else. What we're doing is giving people cash back. That's our trick. We are trying to pay you to use the application. And also you're going to help turn around spam calls. You're not going to get any more. And you're ultimately providing to the bigger picture, which is making the conversion of cold calls into cash calls, right? So that's how we approach it. So the problem is not with the people. They're doing everything fine, and you're never going to change that. Like that shouldn't really be changed. That gets into public manipulation stuff. It's weird.
Absolutely. So here in the UK, we've watched companies like TransferWise and other companies use a lot of guerrilla UX. So they go around coffee shops, they talk to people, they see how the app's working, what have you. Have you been going around a lot of grandmas' houses and seeing how they're doing and whether they like Robocash? How does that work for you then?
Actually, what we're doing right now is we're calling people, you know, we're using the offensive use of our algorithm, which is you let people know they're going to be paid for every minute that they're on a phone call, and then you call them. And then what we're posting that as is a survey. We want to talk to you about robocall, and people pick up, and we talk to them about how many spam calls do you get a week. Typical answer is between 10 and 15. If you knew that you were getting paid to pick up a phone call, would you do so? And surprisingly, it's hard to get people to believe that they're actually going to be paid for a phone call because
that
you're so used.
Surely, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. You're so used to your bank account, to PayPal. You're thinking, oh, I've got to set up this thing, put my email in, password, and we wanted to make it super easy. So no, you don't do any of that. It's just your phone number. You put your phone number into our website. That's how you log in with the OTP code, 6-digit code that you log in with, and then you can cash out. So it's as, you know, frictionless as possible, but getting people to believe that's the hard part. So we're sort of seeing, you know, okay, how difficult is this going to be? You know, what percentage of people just refuse to have a suspension of disbelief and believe that we actually are paying you right this second for this very conversation we're having, and you can go and take this money right away after this phone call. So hard to make people believe that. So that's sort of what we're doing. And actually immediately after this, I've got to make calls for the next half hour. Yeah, I'll tell you what, people don't like being called super early in the morning. It's something that we learn.
It's 5 o'clock over here, so you're more than welcome to call us. But just out of interest, well, we've been on this call now for just over 20 minutes. How much would we have made by now?
Well, if we were getting paid 25 cents a minute, you would have made $4 at this point.
Wow.
So that actually,
that's not bad at all, is it?
Yeah. Well, some people said they like to be paid $50 an hour, which is totally understandable. You look at research surveys, people who do research, you typically get payments of $100 for an hour or so. So it's really just, what is it worth for a company to have you listen to them for some period of time and, you know, maybe convince you that you really are a good fit for their product and you should buy it. And surprisingly, that number is a little bit higher than we think. They're already paying advertisers for this. They're paying a lot of money to advertisers to try to get you to buy the product. So why not just stop paying the advertisers and just pay you directly? You know, if you're going to market to me, be a man. Market to me to my face.
Absolutely. But you know, looking at what you're doing and how you're pioneering an industry as well, you know, we're hearing numbers like maybe $80 for your digital identity. Maybe that's what banks are valuing our digital identity at. You're valuing a digital identity probably much less because, well, not digital, sorry, phone identity is much less, but you know, much like digital identities will probably go astronomically higher, I assume that you're planning the same.
Well, we don't know that number, and we're just going to let the market do its thing. So right now, currently, it takes 5 cents to unlock this financial filter and get through to your phone. We're still in beta, but once we start going to a publicly, you know, ready version that's stable, you're going to be able to set your own market value, your own market price. So the market value of your digital identity is whatever you want it to be, honestly. And if a company is willing to pay that amount, that's your value. You know, if you look at an average, it doesn't really tell you what the individual value is. And one way that you could make yourself more valuable on our platform is if you want to start inputting, you know, your psychographic, your demographic, your soft credit sort of pull. That makes you a lot more valuable to companies who know now that, okay, this person is in my market. I want to talk to them and I want to pay them more because they're now, we know that they're within our target market. You become more valuable. So no idea what the individual value of a DID is going to be, but we're going to provide the tool to let the market figure that out.
Sounds really, really novel, and I hope it works out for you. It's been fantastic talking to you, Adrian. We've got our fingers crossed for you here in the UK, and we're hoping you'll have a few more hits on your site from this side of the pond, as we call it here. But thank you again. It's been fascinating. It's been really eye-opening as well to see a new industry sector, and we hope to hear more soon.
Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate it. Download Robocash, Google Play. Let's get this.